This morning I want to talk about three things that are really costly as far as power and control go, and they all have to do with the pivot motion. Now the pivot is really everything to do with the body, so it's feet, knees, hips and shoulders. In fact, everything except arms, hands and the club. So I want to particularly look at what's happening with hips and shoulders, and like I said, tackle three things that are likely to be costing you power. I'm going to use the alignment rods because it's going to be a little bit easier for us to see what's happening with the movement. Now the first one is when the club swings back, we're looking to develop torque through the middle of the body there, because that's where we're going to develop some elastic energy. Now that torque is just the difference or stretch between my upper body and my lower body. So at address, my upper body and my lower body is square. So they've turned, let's say they've turned 0 degrees. So there's no torque developed. As soon as I've got a difference between my upper body and my lower body, then I'm starting to develop a little bit of that stretch or that torque. What I want to do is I want to develop that evenly during the backswing. At the end of the backswing, my upper body is going to have rotated roughly double what my lower body has rotated. Now the easiest and smoothest way to develop that movement is to start with that ratio of my upper body turning at twice the rate of my lower body right from the very beginning. So the first error that I see a lot is where the lower body and the upper body both start turning at the same rate. So there's no torque that's really developed, so none of that elastic energy is able to be produced very efficiently, even from the very beginning of the backswing. The other thing that does is it tends to create too much hip turn, and also can alter your balance or restrict your balance, hinder your balance as you're going back and through. So if I turn back and keep everything turning together, eventually my upper body will turn more, but by overturning my hips, now I'm a little unstable when I get to the end of the backswing. So first thing, when you go back, whether you're doing exactly as I'm doing with alignment rods or golf clubs, have the feeling that you've got upper body turning double the rate, however far you go back. So that's the first thing we want to talk about. The second thing is getting the movement out of order as you begin your downswing. So when I get to the end of my backswing, let's say my upper body's turned about 80 degrees and my lower body's turned about 40. I've got a 40-degree difference, or 40 degrees of torque between my upper body and my lower body. When I begin my downswing, I want to increase that torque. Now the way I do that is allowing my lower body to start to turn first. So you can see my upper body's virtually not moving at all, and my lower body has started to rotate back toward the target. Now let's say at the top of the backswing I've got a 40-degree difference, and then I rotate my hips, let's say 10 degrees. Now I've got a 50-degree difference. And it's that elastic energy that's going to help me in the downswing. My downswing is going to take somewhere between about a quarter and a third of a second. So everything's happening very quickly, but there is a sequence to that movement that we need to observe. So from the top of the swing, one practice I can do is just to feel, can I move my lower body? I don't have to move it a long way, but just to initiate the movement so that it starts to turn before my upper body. And doing it with alignment rods, even just my hands across my shoulders, and then with a golf club going to the top of the backswing and just starting to practice that movement. The third thing is when the club swings down, we've got like an underturning of the body at impact. So as the club swings down at impact, I want to have my hips rotated 20, 30 degrees, maybe even 40 degrees past being square when I strike the ball. If my hips have underturned, and I see a lot of players who'll hit the ball with their hips square and their upper body closed, it's very easy with that sort of movement pattern, one, to lose power, but also to strike the ground in the wrong spot. So typically the swing would get to its low point before you get to the ball. If that happens, then you're going to hit behind the ball, or perhaps even hit the ball a bit thin. It's the same error. So the key that causes that is the upper body and arms working first. So if I grab a golf club, so from the top of the swing, I want my hips to lead, by the time I get to impact, my lower body's turned 30, 40 degrees and my upper body's turned past square, you know, roughly half that. So as the club's swinging down, if my arms go first, or my hands and arms go first, then I'll catch up and lose a lot of power. Often the reason that occurs, or two main reasons. One is that the arms and hands are dominating the movement at the start of the downswing, which we don't want. The second is that the hip movement is a little bit too slow as you start your downswing. So when I start my downswing, if my hip movement is really slow as I start down, then it's not going to allow me to continue to use that elastic energy. So that my hip movement at the start of the downswing works hard. I'm saying that carefully because I don't want you to sort of really go as hard as you possibly can with your hip movement. We certainly don't want to risk injury, but there is some sharpness to the movement. So from the top of the swing, so if I play a shot here, and again, my hips are going to move reasonably sharply, but as you'll see, it's not a violent movement at all. All I've done is I've got my hips going at the very start of the downswing, and then they'll just continue to turn from there. If the hip movement is a little bit too lazy, then I'm going to have difficulty shifting pressure from foot to foot. I'm going to have difficulty retaining that elastic energy, and then my shots are going to suffer because not only are they likely to lose distance, but they're likely to lose control. So have a look at footage of your swing, or even just practice those three things to develop the correct sequence just with upper body and lower body. And we can talk about other things in other videos, but those are key to getting you to get the feeling of control, balance, and power in your golf swing.